Let's just start with Shakvataria. There's 6 psulim in the Mishnah. Lulav HaGazel, stolen, Yavish, Irni Dachas, Asherah, the top cut off, the leaves are torn off, 6 psulim. The Mishnah continues with what if the leaves are spread out? Pasul. Rav Yudah says, bind the top. The Mishnah concludes, a lulav from Hara Barzel, these short lulavs, or what's the minimum size, 3 tfachim, then it's going to be kosher. So Gemara, basically, the whole Amid here is one question. The Mishnah sounds like, how long is a lulav HaGazel pasul? How long? Sounds like 8 days. Says the Gemara, day number 1, I understand why. Because of the din of lachem. Why? Because the pasuk says, do you have to take a lulav as we lachem b'yom harishayin? What about all other days? Says the Gemara, I don't understand why it's pasul. If it's hadar, hadar is all 8 days. Hadar, a beautiful lulav. But lachem is only day 1. So says the Gemara, you know why? Mitzvah haba ba'avera. The Gemara says, this is the makar, lulav HaGazel is the makar for mitzvah ba'avera. Where do we see it in the Torah? We see that the pasuk, when it comes to bringing a carbon, equates a lame animal and a stolen animal. Just like a lame animal, an animal with a mum, will never become kosher, so to a lulav HaGazel will never become kosher. Not a lulav HaGazel. An animal that is stolen will never become kosher. Explains the Gemara, I don't understand. When you steal the animal, why is it pasul? Because the pasuk says it has to be mikem, from you. But after the owner is miyayesh, let's understand what that is, because we need that for the new Gemara today. When the owner despairs of ever getting it back, what's the halacha? The halacha should be, it's yours. And the answer is, it is yours. But yet you can't bring it as a carbon. Why? Because mitzvah ba'avera. So to a lulav HaGazel, even after the owner is miyayesh, even after the owner says, oh, I'm never getting it back, you're not allowed to bring it as a carbon. The Gemara says, I'll bring you a mashal. The king is walking with his officers, and they get to the toll booth. The king says, pay the toll. And the servants say, why? You own everything. He says, everyone should learn from me. So too says Hashem, even though everything is mine. So I steal from you, David, I bring it to a carbon to Hashem. It's the same thing. Hashem owns everything. Still, says Hashem, don't bring anything as a stolen item. Why? Because mitzvah, haba, ba'avera. We concluded that Shmuel argues on that which we just said, and that's where we pick it up. I think that was pretty simple. 2.5 minutes. We all could do Shakvataria, and we now move on from that detail. Upliga dirav Yitzchak. Pliga dirav Yitzchak. We're 5 lines from the Y lines. Tamar Rav Yitzchak bar Nachmeni Amar Shmuel. Lo yishanu ala b'yam tav rishayin. We only learned the din of lulav HaGazel on the first day of Yom Tov. But says Rav Yitzchak, the name of Shmuel, Aval b'Yom Tov Sheni, it's kosher. Mitoy sheyoytze b'Shaul, yoytze nami b'Gazel. You're able to fulfill the mitzvah even with a stolen lulav. So Joe is very bothered. And Joe wants to know, 1 second, what happened to mitzvah ba'avera? Does Shmuel argue on the whole premise of mitzvah ba'avera? That's what it sounds like, right? That's what it sounds like, because he says you can be yaitz to the lulav HaGazel. So Lamaisa, if you look at the last line in Taisvis, go all the way on the bottom of the Amid, the last line, a 1-line Taisvis. Joe, this is for you. I know this is bothering you. Says Taisvis, on days number 2 through 8, the whole requirement of lulav is not deoraisa. It's derabanan. Why is it only derabanan? It's a very good question. The reason is because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. So when we had a Beis HaMikdash, then the din of lulav was a deraisa for all 8 days. Now that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, the din of lulav is only deraisa on day number 1. Aside for trivia question, when? Bizman hazeh. Where? Shabbos. Maybe. Kaisel. Heilige Joe is a Kaisel Yid. According to many Shiitais, when you go to the Kaisel with your lulav, you're Mekayim a din daraisa. Because it still has the Shmitz din, it's a Rambam. famous Ray, not for now.
So you're allowed to steal for the Rabbanan.
Oh, that's what's very fascinating. So what's the answer to your question? Rav David wants to know, you're allowed to steal for the Rabbanan? What's the answer? You're not allowed to steal. And even though our Gemara says your yaitse, your mitzvah of lulav, was it an Aveira? Of course. Do you have to do tshuva? Of course. Do you have to maybe even pay back the guy you stole from? Maybe. But are you yaitse the mitzvah? There's two different things we have to remember. When I go and I steal your item, and you're miyai, you say, oh, I'm never going to get it back. It's mine. I have full ownership of it. Did I do an Aveira? Of course. Is that mitzvah above Aveira? Yes. But after years, it becomes yours. So you're right. All we're saying is on Dinei Dirabanan, you'll be able to say the mitzvah. You certainly cannot do it. Oh, very good. That's a good question. So right now, all we're going to assume is when you hear he's miyayish. You hear in shul, you listen, and you hear the guy saying, oh, that idiot stole my item. Oh, I'm never going to get it back. You hear him saying he despairs from getting it back, but we're going to follow up on that nikuda in a moment. So that is Shmuel. So Masiv Rav Nachman asks Rav Nachman back into the Gemara by Yitzchak. Lulav ha'gazel v'yavesh. Puzzle. What did the Mishnah say? Lulav ha'gazel v'ha'yavesh, with two lines from the very wide lines, is puzzle. What's the obvious implication of the Mishnah? That only a lulav that is stolen or dry is puzzle. Hasha'ul. Let's say the lulav is a borrowed lulav, kosher. It would sound like from the Mishnah, only stolen or dried out is puzzle. If I borrow a lulav, it's kosher. Says the Gemara, imas. When is the Mishnah talking about? What day of Sukkot? Ilema, if you're going to tell me B'Yom Tov Rishon, if you're going to tell me it's talking about on the first day of Yom Tif, what's the problem? Haksiv lachem. We know on the first day of Yom Tif, it has to be lachem. You have to own the lulav. This is why we all know on the first day of Yom Tif, you don't let your wife, you don't let your girl, your kids shake the lulav before you. Why? Because they can make a kinyan. They could acquire something, but they're not able to give something away. And on day number one, Aksiv Lachem, Mishel Lachem, it has to be yours. And if you borrow it, Vailavdi Dehu, it's not yours. So if the diak in the Mishnah is a stolen, a dried out lulav is possible, but a borrowed lulav is kosher, what's the diak? What's it referring to? Elalav, when is it referring to? B'Yom Tov Sheni. It's referring to the second day of Yom Tif. And what does the Mishnah say? V'katani lulav, katani gazel pasol. So the Gemara asks a kasha on Shmuel. Again, what did Shmuel say? A stolen lulav is kosher. Not like we were saying until now. He's not bothered by mitzvah haba ba'aveira. But says the Gemara, our Mishnah is seemingly talking about what? What's our Mishnah talking about? Excuse me, I said that wrong. Let me say that right again. That Shmuel said, because you're yaitse with a borrowed lulav, you're yaitse with a stolen lulav. Says the Gemara, our Mishnah is clearly not that way. Because our Mishnah has to be talking about not on day number one, has to be talking about on day number 2 through 8, from the fact that our Mishnah says by implication that a borrowed lulav is kosher, which is only true on day number 2 to 8. And yet, what does the Mishnah say? Mishnah says the lulav ha'gazel is possible. So clearly from the Mishnah, we see that all 8 days is a puzzle, not like Shmuel. So answers the Gemara an interesting teretz. I'm going to tell you, according to Shmuel, the din in the Mishnah is only on the first day of Yom Tif. Only on day number 1 is a lulav ha'gazel possible according to the Mishnah. It says the lulav ha'gazel is possible, which shows us a lulav ha'shal is kosher, which is clearly not on day number 1. Says the Gemara, But v'loy mi ba'i kamar. Now, this is an important thing to realize. Every time a Mishnah says a din, there's two ways of learning that din. I tell you a stolen lulav is possible. So now, you now can learn one of two things. Either you could learn, you said a rabbi, you said a stolen lulav is possible. That implies what? A borrowed lulav is kosher. Or you know what it might mean? Rabbi, you said a stolen lulav is possible? And also a borrowed lulav is possible. V'loy mi ba'i kama. It's pashit, says the Gemara. Loy mi ba'i. It's needless to say. It's so obvious the Mishnah doesn't even need to speak it out. Shol, if you borrow a lulav, Tilavdi dehu, it's not yours, so it's pashit. Now what? It's puzzle. Avol, however, guzzle, if you stole a lulav. Ironically, we have more reason to think it's kosher. Why? Because Ema, let us say, Stam Gizela Yosh Bailamu. When you steal something, we assume the owner despairs. So maybe only a borrowed lulav is kosher. But a apostle, excuse me. Why? Because it has to be lachem, it has to be yours. But a stolen lulav, that the owner is miyayish, the owner despairs of getting it back. And therefore, uchadidei dami, should be considered like it is yours. Therefore, Kamash Malan, says the Mishnah, lulav hagazel is possible. So says the Gemara, we have a fundamental debate how to read the words in the Mishnah. Pashim shat, lulav hagazel is possible, and a lulav hasha'ul, a borrowed lulav, is kosher. Comes along Shmuel and he says no. A lulav hagazel is possible, and it's pashit that a lulav hasha'ul is possible. Why is that true? Because a lulav hasha'ul, when you borrow a lulav, I ask you, if I borrow your lulav, whose is it? It's yours. It's not mine. But when I steal your lulav, then what? Then there's a thought process. If you steal it, the owner is meyayish. So maybe it is indeed yours. So that's the chiddush, that it is not yours. Very good. According to Shmuel, lulav hagazel on day number 2 is going to be kosher. Day number 1, it's possible. Day number 2, it's going to be kosher. Fascinating detail that Shmuel holds. And our Mishnah is not a kasha, because he could say that our Mishnah is only talking about day number 1, not the subsequent days of Yom Tov. We're going to stop over here. The reason being the next Gemara is a little bit of a difficult Gemara. We're going to pick it up here tomorrow. I feel bad that a lot of you guys were not here. I hope they watched the recording, because everyone is holding very strong on the Chazaras in Mirza Hashem. Yeah, we have to think of an incentive to get Shakavatari. I don't know. Little kids talks to them, $5, $10. I don't know if they don't talk to them. I know we gotta think. Gotta think. No, Joe, what's it gonna take for Shakavatari? What do you hold? It's all about the Chazar. Okay, B'siyat Shmaya.